I really get to clicking, but I'm looking for a sister to revive and win a kiss. If you want some love, just let me know.
Now let's have a look at this vehicle. This is probably the best one. Yeah. Look how angled this motherfucker is. And yes, I don't normally swear, but I just want to put this out there. This thing is insanity when we look at it from a structural point of view. It has a complete dome, meaning that, first of all, modeling it is going to be a real issue. There isn't really any flat spots. The weak spot is pretty much the lower glacis. It gets rid of that driver's spot, which you see on the IS-4M and IS-3, and the driver's spot is definitely not as much of a weak spot as it is in those vehicles. It is still a weak spot though. The gun breech is pretty much where you're going to have to aim, and also the driver's spot or that low glacis if you have enough penetration. The turret is going to be pretty much impenetrable. The thing is, if you look at the current Russian heavies, what you have is the IS-4M at 7.7, and I believe the T-10M at 8.3. So the only logical place where this can go, unless they change BRs around, is 8.0. So what you're looking at is the range of 7.0 to 8.0. There's a lot of vehicles from 7.0 to 8.0 which are going to struggle against this thing, mainly British, mainly German, but they still should be able to hit the weak spots. 8.0 to 9.0, its armor is going to be incredibly trolly, I think is the word for it. And the reason why I say that is this picture. So if you look at this picture, you may not see anything weird, you may not see anything odd, but I've talked about this in the past and it worries me a lot. So the first thing is the angled turret. So the angled turret is completely fine, very similar to the IS-3 one. Hopefully there is a weak spot either here or here, and if not, there will be a weak spot on the driver's spot, and there's probably weaker armor on the back of it. That's alright. The issue is when it comes to the hull. So the hull, first of all, you have this incredibly angled piece of machinery. This is the 150mm angled at probably around about 60, something like that. If we take a thing from here and 90 from here, it may be around 50, 45, something like that. But whatever happens, it's an extremely angled 150mm. So you're going to shoot the side of this thing and nothing's going to happen. Then you have this bit. Now this is incredibly angled. Now this is, if I get this right, this is this area going down here behind the tracks. Now what's going to happen is a lot of people are going to shoot the tracks trying to go through, and they're going to hit this area or they're going to hit this area here, and it's going to bounce off because the deflection of the angle is so hard. So what you have right now is this little area from the side that you'll be able to shoot at and reliably pen if you don't have crazy penetration. So from that point of view, it's going to be impossible to hit. We're talking about here, right? Or we're talking about the top of the track, the bottom of the track, top of the wheel. And, oh, it's a rough one. It's a really rough shot to make. And it's something that I talked about when I talked to, I think it was the Object 256 or something like that, where it might not be the Object 256, but it was one of the crazy Russian heavy blueprints that I like to use as an example, where people like to add in blueprint vehicles, because it's just ridiculous. It's a diamond hull on this prototype Russian vehicle, and that basically means that there is no weak spot on it to shoot at when you're shooting at the side of it or when you're shooting at the front of it. At least this IS-7 is going to have some weak spots, but the weak spot that we're looking at from the side is incredibly small when we have a look at it. And also there's this here, which is extra add-on armor. So you have a very small place to hit it. And then if you're talking about from the front, if the driver port isn't a weak spot, the only one is this extremely angled lower glacis. This tank could create a lot of issues, but the main thing is because of the APF SDS rounds running around, the heat that's also running around, the heat FS, and the heat now from the AMX30, it shouldn't be too much of an issue. But just understand, when this thing is released, study it. Study it hard, because otherwise you're going to struggle and where to pen it. You know when sometimes with the IS-6, when you shoot it, and what happens is nothing happens in the side, and it's as if your round just disappears? Well, that's going to happen with this too, but to a much higher extent. So just understand that. This thing is incredibly well armored and it's got an incredibly dangerous gun. I hope that this isn't just an event vehicle, but it also gets a version in the tree. And since there were 7 of them, different prototypes made, it's perfect for that. You can have a premium gift tournament version in the form of the Object 260, and then the IS-7 gets put in the tree. Just do that, please. That would be really, really nice. They're working on Italian tanks. We already knew that. But it is nice to hear. Hopefully they come out soon. I'm looking forward to them to see how they fill the rank 3 and 4 gaps, which are going to be absolutely ginormous. For the French, they filled them with American tanks and also American aircraft in their tree. I want to see what they do for Italians. Maybe fill them full of Germans. I mean, why not? The Abrams ammunition load will be revised. The reload speed may be reduced due to the speed of the ammo door opening. The explosion of ammunition and the damage to the ammo doors will destroy the tank. When the ammo rack is damaged or the shells will disappear, this change will be in game soon. Ammunition on fire cannot be put out with a fire extinguisher. Tower with a burning ammo rack will have a turn away from the engine compartment to avoid fire, and wait for the fire will be over. So obviously this is one of those weird translation things, but let's go through it piece by piece. So Abrams ammunition load will be revised. This could be the amounts that it carries. This could also be the M833 round. I doubt it's going to get the M833 round highly, even though it's in the game files. If it does get it, then maybe it would justify the fact that it went up in BR and the T-64B did not. But I don't think it requires that round. I would rather save that round for something else. The reload speed may be reduced due to the speed of the ammo door opening. This is rubbish. The reload speed, or the standard reload speed for Abrams, that is well known and documented, is at least around about 4 seconds. Same with the Challenger. If you cannot reload the gun within 4 seconds, you are out. Especially with the Challenger and the Abrams. Right now, both of these vehicles actually reload way too slowly compared to what they should. So this ammo door opening thing, like, they can use it as a justification to reduce the reload speed, but they are wrong in this. If you've ever actually looked at an ammo door opening from the Abrams, then you would know this is ridiculous. The explosion of ammunition and the damage to the ammo doors will destroy the tank. So I think what this means is, right now, if you hit the ammunition in the tank, it'll explode, fire will go up, but the tank itself won't explode. But this doesn't take into account if the ammo doors are damaged. So let's say you're in an Abrams, your ammo gets hit, starts cooking off, but the round keeps going through and penetrates the ammo doors. Then what's going to happen is that explosion is going to go into the turret of the tank, and it's going to blow it up. It's going to incinerate everything inside. So they're pretty much adding a new mechanic in, which means that, well, not a new mechanic, but a new way the mechanic's going to go, where if you shoot like the ammo rack from the side, it's going to do exactly what it did before. But if you shoot it from the back or the front, and the ammo door is penetrated at the same time as the ammunition going off, it's going to blow up the tank. I think that's fine. Like, that makes sense to me. Like, if the tank itself, the ammo door is penetrated, then obviously the whole system, which is designed to keep the people alive inside with the ammo cooking off, won't work. When the ammo rack is damaged, all shells will disappear, so everything will disappear in the turret instead of just some of them which get hit. That change will come soon. Ammunition on fire cannot be put out with an extinguisher, so basically it'll just be cooked off now. And also, the tower with a burning ammo rack will have to turn away from the engine compartment to avoid fire and wait for the fire to be over. So, the way it works right now is if you hit an Abrams in the turret and it sets alight, for some reason the engine will sometimes cook as well, or all the time it will cook. I think this just is an issue with the coding. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to get rid of that. So you won't be able to use a fire extinguisher on your turret ammunition stowage, which makes sense. Like, you shouldn't really be able to. And you have to let that cook off and then let it be... ammunition go back into it, and then you're able to fire with that ready rack, which is in the turret. Now, the way they want to change it compared to what it is now is letting that ammo cook off, so not being able to FPE it, and also if your ammo is on fire over the top of the engine will set on fire and you will have to use the FPE, but if your turret is away from the engine deck, then it won't set on fire. Now, I have a few issues with this. I have no idea how a fire in the ammo would set the engine on fire, since, fire goes upwards, it doesn't go downwards. So I'm not exactly sure about that. We even have the visual representation of that in the game. But if they want to do this as kind of a micro nerf to the thing, I mean, go ahead. Like, you've already put it at the highest BR. If you want to try and balance it in these weird ways, go ahead. But it will just make it very unhistorical like the Challenger is right now in the game. The T-80 model is ready. If you don't know what the T-80 is, the T-80 is another one of these Russian medium tanks. The main difference between this and something like the T-64 that we have in game is that it has a different engine. It has a turbine engine, very similar to the M1 Abrams, and it is, let's just say, quite nippy because of it. It also has a multi-fuel engine, which is something that we see on the Chieftain, but it is actually successful. Has a very similar gun to the T-64, and the armor is seen as 450 to 650 equivalent. Obviously, we don't know this as a fact, but that would mean that it would be slightly worse, I believe, than the T-64 in game. So basically, what we get is a quicker version of the T-64 with near enough the same gun. But it will be much more useful for the general player. Now, what is interesting is you have the T-80, and then you have the T-80B and the T-80U, which are basically the two main ones which we see. So the T-80U is the 1985 version, and you have the T-80B, which is the 1978. These have very big differences, and then you also have ones which have ERA, so the BV has ERA on it, and obviously you have some interesting stuff on the turrets that you see here. But basically, these machines are, I would say, fit the meta better than something like a T-64. They are quicker. They have an incredibly good gun, very similar to the T-64, and will run rampant. A lot of people have been asking for the T-72. This is better than it by a lot. So just get this instead and be happy that you're getting it. Now, something that will attract your eyes is that the model itself is ready. So just because a model of something is ready does not mean that it is ready to implement. There is more stages to it than just the model. So the model is the first stage. You create the model, the physical model, which is going to be in game, or the computer generated model. Then you've got to add everything to it. So you've got to add the damage model to it. You have to add the characteristics to it. You've got to add all of the different stuff to it, the gun, how the gun's going to fire and everything like that. There's a lot to work on instead of just a model. And also finishing touches, especially when it comes to HD. So even though it says here that it's ready, it may just mean the base model, or it may mean the complete model. We don't know. So it may come in the next major patch. It may come a bit further down the line. It may be 181, something like that. You never know with this thing, because we have a rough translation. So the T-64B will be improved to the T-64BV version via the module already in game. So for me, that means that the BV is going to be a modification. Very similar to, the BMP-1, where you get a different launcher on it if you get a certain modification. This means that it gets basically a massive upgrade out of its modification. Now, this is very similar to the thermal sights, in my opinion. Do we want to change BRs by modification? Because the BV, it basically gets a bunch of ERA. Now, ERA generally isn't that useful at higher tiers, because everybody is slinging around APFSDS, but it still has some uses against very specific vehicles, and you're going to take it over not taking it, unless it adds a ton of weight to your machine, and it's going to move very slowly. Now, as we've seen in the past, ERA hasn't really been modeled with a ton of weight behind it. So the T64BV, especially if it has the engine upgrades, will not be that different to the performance of the T64B. So we're going to have to see how that plays out, how much the engine's going to be affected by having this extra ERA. But for me, I would personally prefer it just to be two separate vehicles, because it means then you can balance by BR instead of having this system where more people are going to complain about it, because it means that the stock grind of the T64B is completely different to what you end up at the end of it, just with the BMP one, just with hopefully how the night sights are not. Hopefully how the optical sights are also implemented, sorry. Moving on, Germans and Japanese will get tanks with armor in the 6th rank, but German tank with armor, the Leopard 2, will not have really good armor for its battle rating. So once the Leopard 2 is added, you pretty much have two options. You got the AV and the A4. The A4 is a pretty cool vehicle. The AV is also a cool vehicle. And I think by tanks with armor, I think somebody may have asked a question maybe about the Leopard 2K, because the Leopard 2K doesn't have a lot of armor on it. So they were wondering if you would have something which has at least some armor on it. The Leopard 2s obviously have some armor, but the armor itself is going to get annihilated by the guns which we have at top tier. As I said before, speed, maneuverability, gun, much more important than armor, even at top tier. There are a few vehicles where this is an exception through the game. The 75 Jumbo is one of them, even though the speed is really good, the gun not so. If we look at something like the Tiger 2H back in the day, its armor made a massive difference over its maneuverability. Obviously, that has changed within time. But yeah, there are certain examples which break the mode, but the majority of it is your gun and maneuverability are much more important than your armor. So the Leopard 2 won't have great armor, but what we should be focusing on is its gun, which is obviously the 120 Rheinmetall. Very good gun, as we've seen on the Leopard 2K, probably the best gun in game right now. And then on top of that, we have a little bit of armor and a little bit less maneuverability compared to the 2K. So how's that going to work out? We're not sure. They talk about the Japanese rank 6. You have two options here. And if you want to break the game, you have a third option. So you have the STC, which is the prototype of the Type 90. The Type 90 is the Japanese main battle tank in the 1990s, very similar to the specs that you see on something like a Leopard 2. So we can see that being added, or at least I can see that being added. The STC, being the prototype, would be much more along the lines of the 9.3 realm, but it definitely should be added as well. That would give Japan a decent rank 6. I may do a separate video looking at just the STC, because I've already done a video in the past looking at the rank 6 Japanese that we may have. If you want to break the game, you add the Type 9. And if you don't know what the Type 9 is, go and have a look at it. If you don't have other modern tanks like the Leopard 2A7, the M1A2 Abrams, or the M1A1 Abrams, the Challenger 2, it will become the de facto monster, and it will be very hard to kill. So yeah, go and have a look at that thing. It's fun as hell. Tanks with two-piece ammunition will cease to be hampered by inert shells exploding. Because of the game mechanics, even heat and HESH, only powder charges will blow up the tank. So that's nice. Basically, right now, if you hit an AP shell, or if you hit the piece of the ammunition which is inert, it will explode as if it is the part of the shell which is not inert. So it'll explode like a HE shell, meaning that your ammunition is exploded, blowing up your tank. So this will help out machines which have two-piece ammunition, stuff which does have two-piece, Challenger, T-64B, and many others with larger guns. I also believe the Conqueror Mark II has two-piece. I might be wrong on that though, so just check for yourself. Moving on, animation of shell casing ejection on vehicles like the T-62 are in the works, but it's hard to create. It won't be anytime soon. That's very much a quality of life addition. Very nice to see, but generally won't be very useful. Most of the time that will be something that will be nice for screenshots and also for cinematics, but for general gameplay, it won't really matter. They're looking at the balance of the P-47. They just recently changed this BR, so they definitely are. They were talking about what it needs, giving it a ground spawn and or reducing the damage of the M2 Browning. So, I've talked about a very long time that the P-47, just put it on the ground. I understand it's an interceptor, I understand you want it to be a bomber hunter, but right now in its current form, it is not that, it is an everything killer. And I was reminiscing on the stream earlier that the issue that I personally have with the P-47 is the fact that it annihilated my love for grinding and researching when I was playing the French tech tree. I was so annoyed playing the French fighters, not because they were bad matchups against the Bf-109, the Spitfires, the Russian planes, because they were all pretty bad matchups, but they were doable. But the P-47 annihilated me, and there was nothing I could do against it. There was such a difference in level of that plane against any of the French aircraft. And the way to fix it is a ground spawn. There's no other way of doing it. That's what you have to do. If you reduce the damage of the M2 Browning, then you annihilate a bunch of other American planes which had nothing to do with this and do not deserve your hatred. Because over the years, they've tried this. They've changed the M2 Browning around. They've given it less damage. They've changed how it works. They've changed its penetration. They've done all these things, but the P-47 still runs rampant in the form of the German one and the Russian one. So it's obviously not the M2 Browning that's the issue. It's the fact that it has an air spawn and outclimbs everything. When what should be happening is giving it a ground spawn and people having to be patient and having to actually climb at a slower rate than everybody else, but then once they're up there, being able to really get involved. Beta testing of the fleet is coming soon, so this means of naval forces. Very happy to see that. It's been in closed beta for a while. It's nice to see how it's come along. I personally find it the least interesting out of the 3 sectors of War Thunder, but I still think it's nice to see that it's finally coming into beta testing properly instead of closed beta. Hopefully a lot more people get involved, give their critiques. I've given mine. It hasn't changed since the last time I talked about it. I think destroyers were a bad idea, but I seem to be in the minority there, and that's completely fine. There are a few issues I'm in the minority on. I'm alright with it. They're thinking of adding anti-ship missiles for ships. I mean, go ahead. We're adding everything else to ships. They're already thinking about submarines. They're thinking about battleships. They're thinking about aircraft carriers. All of these things which are designed to take them away from the combined forces element, which attracted me to War Thunder in the first place. Yeah, why not just add anti-ship missiles? Go ahead. Why not? The next major patch will be in May. So it seems like I'm not allowed to have a break, and that's fine. There's been a hell of a lot going on over the last few months with War Thunder, and it's not going to stop. The train is still moving. Right now, this event that is going on, the Chronicles of War Thunder, is going to finish 10th of May. So that pretty much gives you 20 days in May where the next major patch will drop, update 1.79. So in that time, we have to have dev blogs, we have to have dev servers, we have to, well, I personally have to do a lot of research about the vehicles. It's going to be interesting to see what is dropped in that update, and if some of this stuff is dropped in that update, we may have a change in the highest tier when it comes to rank 6. Definitely interesting as hell. Some of the other changes, hopefully, maybe the removal of the 105 and the Panther 2, which could be, replaced with something. So we might get some interesting, will be replaced by something. So we may get some interesting dev blogs on that. Some changes to the Challenger would be nice. Some additions to Air RB with certain stuff that I've talked about before. The addition of railways, the addition of support vehicles, the addition of AI, the addition of ground bases being much more individualistic instead of just bombing a point with tickets. Make it so it's just buildings instead of stuff like that. Adding the enduring confrontation idea into realistic with the idea of the moving battlefield. Add that in. That would be cool to see over a shorter span of time. But yeah, we'll have to see in the dev blogs which are upcoming. I'll make sure to cover it for you guys, and moving forward it'll be fun. The market's also getting improved. You'll be able to view the camouflage before buying. So you'll be able to see the goods before you buy them, which is always nice. Because obviously you can't always do that. So yeah, that's good, I suppose. But overall, with the marketplace, I think the marketplace has been overall positive for the game. I know a lot of people went after it the first week it was out. I think they jumped the gun, as I talked about in my marketplace video. If you want to know my thoughts on it and how to push it forward, please go and watch that video where I talk about it. I talked about it along with a few other topics, but I believe it's in the title, so it shouldn't be hard to find. But yeah, that's pretty much everything. As you can see, a hell of a lot talked about by BVVd. I thank him very much for coming on the stream and having a chat. It is nice to get more communication with the developers. I know a lot of people will be not happy with some of these changes, especially because it seems to be focused a lot on the Russian vehicles. But do understand, this is a Russian stream. They're going to talk about the Russian vehicles. We don't know the other side of the coin yet. We don't know what America's going to get, Britain or Germany. Well, we know what Germany and Japan are going to get, but we don't know what America and Britain are going to get. So, yeah, just understand that. There is, a lot of talk about IS-7, T-80, T-64, the T-62M. Like, all of these are Russian vehicles, but understand they're talking on a Russian stream. So, let's wait for an English stream, or let's wait for the dev blogs to see how this patch is going to come out, instead of just getting angry right now. We need full information on what's going on and what's going to be part of what's going on, instead of just little tidbits. And here we have tidbits, and you also have my opinion. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.